Next up, we're going to change the sound effects. So if you listen closely, you'll hear that each bounce has a slightly different sound effect. It's choosing from an array of sound effects and randomly playing one of them. They're not the most amazing sound effects in the world because I kind of made them all myself, but it is the structure of getting some variation into our game, which makes it a lot more interesting. So let's jump in and get started. In the last lecture, I gave you 5 sound effects. We're going to need those. So if you didn't get those in the last lecture, at least have more than one sound effect in this lecture. So you've got multiple things we can use so that we can add a whole bunch of different sounds when the ball bounces around. Open up your ball.cs file. We want to make a couple of additions here. So instead of just saying play the sound effect, we need to say play from a number of different sound effects. And at the moment, if you look on Ball, we have the audio source. There's only one field in here. There's an option only to put one sound effect in there. Basically, that's saying the sound effect for the ball is this. If we want to have more than that, we need to do that on our script. So as a starting point, I'm going to remove, so click on the selector and double click on none. So now we have no audio source. What we're going to do is say, at particular points in time, we're going to feed in with our code. We'll feed in what we want the audio clip to be rather than just saying it's this one all the time. Okay, so over into our ball.cs script. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Up the very top of our script, we need to have another configuration parameter. So we'll serialize field. And this will be what? What is the type of thing that we want to play? Well, it's going to be an audio clip. That's the type of variable, and we'll call this will be an array. So we need to say it's an array using our open and close square brackets. And then we want to call it ball sounds. Okay, so we have an array which is called audio clip of ball sounds. Great work. Next up, we scroll all the way down. We'll have a look at what we've got in our on collision enter. Instead of saying get component audio source dot play, we're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to use something called play one shot. Play one shot. The reason we're using play one shot instead of play is because play one shot will say play it the whole way through and don't let it be interrupted. Whereas if you just do play, there's a chance that when a new audio gets triggered, it will cause the previous one to stop. So you could be halfway through something happening like and then click and then click, and we don't want to have that. So basically saying as soon as we start a sound effect, play one shot, make sure that it plays the whole way through. Even if other things start to play over the top of it, that's fine. Okay, no problem. But now we're doing this play one shot, we need to tell it what to play. We need to feed a clip or clips into that. So if we add a line above, we will say audio clip, because that's what it is. It's an audio clip. We're making a variable, and we will call it just clip. We don't need to know what this is outside of our method in here, outside of our if statement. So clip is just fine. And that's going to equal ball sounds that we just created, our variable up the very top, ball sounds. And we want to do some randomization in here within our array. So we want to say from the first point of the array until the final point of the array. And it's looking, it might give us some hints in here. No, it's not giving us hints. So how do we do that? If we're going from something to something, how do we do that? Well, we're going to use our random.range that we've used before. And now we want it to go from the lower end to the upper end. So if you know how to do that, then jump in, pause the video and type that in now. If you're not sure, we're going to say from 0, which is the first point in the array, comma, and here's the interesting bit, we will say ball sounds dot length. Okay, so now I was pausing a little bit there, giving you a few hints and seeing if you were interested in adding it yourself. We're missing something in here, and this is ambiguous between Unity engine.random and system.random, so we need to tell it in here where you're talking about Unity engine.random. That's an interesting error it gave us there. It's saying there's a couple of different types of randoms you could be using. We've talked about namespaces, so I'm not sure what random you want me to use. We're using the random that is the Unity engine random. Okay, now it's happy. Okay, so if you didn't catch that, we're saying we're creating a variable that is of type audio clip. It is saying the ball sounds, which is our array we've created up at the top. We'd like to say the clip is going to equal ball sounds with a random between the first point in the array and whatever the length of the array is. So if we put in 20 sounds in there, it'll be between 0 and the 20th sound, which will be 19 as a number. Okay, and then what do we feed into Play One Shot? We feed in clip, saying that each time we enter the collision, we will get a new random a random clip from our array, and then we want you to play that particular clip. Okay, and there's one last thing I'm going to do in here that we can leave this as get component audio source each time we're entering collision, or we could make this a little bit easier to read and give ourselves the ability to use the audio source in other places if we want to. So scroll up to the top of our script, we'll create ourselves under state. We're going to say this is a new type of thing. It's going to be our cached component references. And in here we will say audio source, because we want type audio source, not the audio clip now. We're talking about the audio source component itself. We're going to call that my audio source. So we have this as a reference. There's a thing now that's an audio source called my audio source. And then when we start up the game, we will go and get that audio source by saying my audio source equals, and if you know the answer to this riddle, type it in now. What do we need to get? What are we defining my audio source as? Well, we're defining it as get component, and within that audio source. Okay, this is a pretty standard structure where we put our parentheses on the end. This is a pretty standard structure where we cache our component reference, so we're only finding it once. We're only saying to the engine at the very start when we run our script, hey, go and find the component. It's the audio source component, and then from that point on, it knows exactly which one it is. That makes it a little bit more efficient as well. It's not quite as efficient as going and getting the component every single time. It's more efficient to get it once and say, this is what it is. And then to complete this off, we need to come all the way down the bottom, and what do you think we type in here? Instead of get component audio source, what do we type in? We type in my audio source. And my audio source, it knows, is getting the component of the audio source on this game object. So we'll click play on that, and this is where, if we've set our code up correctly, then my challenge I'm giving to you right now should make sure everything works perfectly. And the challenge is to play the sounds. In the inspector, add our sounds to our ball sounds array. So find that where that is, add the sounds, and then play the game and see if we have different sound effects every time our ball collides. Okay, fingers crossed it worked. Normally I don't give these sorts of challenges where I haven't tested my code to see if it works, but let's jump over into Unity, click on ball. We can see now underneath, where is it in here? It's thinking. Here we go. Underneath ball, we have ball sounds, and it's hidden. You need to open it up. You see size is currently 0. Now, we've talked about populating arrays in the, the Text 101 section of the course. If you've forgotten, you can highlight, or if you can do it without clicking away, highlight all 5 of your sound effects, click back on ball, and no, it's not going to let me do it that way. I'm going to have to lock the inspector. Lock the inspector while I'm clicked on ball. Now when I click somewhere else, the inspector doesn't change. Highlight my 5 sound effects and drag it over on top of where it says ball sounds and drop it in. And that will automatically say size of 5, and here are the sound effects. I could have done it the other way, which would just be type in 5 and then drag them one at a time or select them one at a time. But this is just a nifty way to put them all in at once. And then unlock the inspector, click on ball, and then click on play. Moment of truth, and okay, it sounds pretty terrible because the sound effects aren't that amazing, but it works, and that's the important thing. We've got the structure in here. Okay, but we've got randomly used sound effects, or sound effects that are triggering random from these 5. We've gone through the structure of how to do that in terms of creating our array variable of ball sounds. Then we also did the additional step of just getting the audio source at the start. So we got it in the start method, and then we are saving that. We're caching that reference, so it knows from that point on exactly which component we're talking about. And then we're playing play one shot, and that is playing clip, and clip is our random from our array. So there it is there. We've added a bit more audio into our game, made it a little bit more interesting. Great work, and I'll see you in an upcoming video.